Producing satin with consistent sheen or consistent and satisfactory sheen is not a rocket science. It lies in you knowing the pro and cons, or the cons and pro of satin production. Satin production is one of the most challenging production, not because it is difficult to mix, no, not because the chemicals are difficult to combine, no, but having to understand the process that leads to you having consistent results is what makes certain production one of the most difficult things to produce. And that is what we are going to be treating here in this video, how to produce the best and premium quality satin paint with consistent sheen. And that is going to be our focus for the next I think few videos, because I will not want to compound everything that we need to learn into just this one video, so you get to understand it much more better by re elaborating the course, should I call it a course now, into different videos, because this one is going to be too short to fully uh, contain all the things that we are going to be discussing. So we'll actually be opening you up to the world of satin production. I know you know how to produce it. No, many people actually profess to know how to produce satin, but not many people get results, as it were, or consistent results, as it were. And one of the most challenging problem with satin is sheen. So we're going to be talking about how to troubleshoot that by giving you adequate and in-depth knowledge on certain production. So I call it the cons and the pros of certain production for you to get consistent sheen. So that is what we are going to be discussing now in this video. No, I will actually be bringing in some other things as we go on. But then we want to consider those factors that are actually responsible for you to get consistent results in certain production. And for me, I want to believe there are just two. There are two. There probably might be three if we include the process of production, but having to deal with the chemicals that is responsible for, I mean, classifying the factors into no chemicals responsible for certain sheen. I just want to say there are two factors that is actually responsible for that. The very first factor that we are going to consider is what you already know, just like you are guessing in your mind. The very first factor is the binder. The binder is actually what determines, to a large extent, the sheen of your satin paint. To a large extent, what determines its sheen is the binder, the type of binder that you use in that production. The type of binder you use in that production, and I'm very, very certain and sure, you being a producer, know some of the binders that we have and some of the binders that we use in certain production. Both the uh, the issue with that is not with the binder itself, but the type of binder you use, and not with the type of binder, but having in-depth knowledge about the binder you are actually using. So for this class, we are going to focus on the two major binder that is used in the production of satin. We have other ones, but we are going to be focusing on the two major types of satin, which is actually a determinant factor to the sheen that you are getting in your satin production. The very first one that is acrylic. We just term it acrylic, we just call it acrylic. But then acrylic also have types. They have types, which is actually informed by the polymer that is used. the polymer and the copolymer that is used in the production of that. I will not be talking about that because it will get a little bit technical. I just want to go straight to the point. So under acrylic that is used, under the acrylic that is used, we now have pure acrylic, 100% pure acrylic. In other words, there's no dilution. There's nothing that is added to this acrylic during its production. So it is called pure acrylic. It is a little bit difficult to come by because most of our vendors will store binders that have copolymers. They will store binders that have copolymers. That will lead us to binders such as styrene acrylic. So when it now becomes styrene acrylic, that means it is no longer pure acrylic. In other words, something has actually been introduced to the acrylates for you to have styrene acrylic. So acrylic. And what was added is the polymer styrene. Is a polymer styrene to modify an acrylic. So it's when styrene is introduced, it modifies this acrylic. So it's more or less like you are now making it a compound. If you remember vividly, in our chemistry class, we know we have what is called chemicals that are compound chemicals. In other words, they have two or more elements in them. They have two or more things in them to make for that chemical. So introducing styrene to acrylic makes it a styrene acrylic, which modifies the acrylic. So the two types of acrylic mainly used are the pure acrylic and the styrene acrylic. But here in our client, especially speaking for Nigerian producer, the major acrylic we use is the styrene acrylic. Is the styrene acrylic. That's the major one we use. Styrene acrylic in the production. But then there is what we call 100% pure acrylic. At least I know Niceal have 100% pure acrylic and so many other companies. But the issue here is the fact that most of our vendors only stock styrene acrylic or just acrylic, which is not a pure 100% acrylic. So that is actually the issue. The best type of acrylic to be used in satin production, which falls between a high sheen and which falls between a gloss and which falls between semi-gloss and gloss. I'm trying to bring a balance to that because what we call satin in this part of the world is not what every other client calls it. For example, probably in Europe, what they call satin is a paint that falls between that is having a sheen level of about 35 to 40 gloss unit, gloss unit at an angle of at 60-degree angle or thereabout. Is it 60-degree angle or 20-degree angle now? That when you check the reflection of light on that substrate that is painted at a particular angle, you are seeing the reflection on the substrate. So when you measure that reflection, the bouncing back of light is either at 35 or 40 or 45 units of gloss units rather. So that makes it a bit technical, but then that is aside. So we understand what we call or what we refer to as satin here to be something that falls between semi-gloss and high gloss. So which is between 50 or 40 rather to 60, even as high as sometimes 70 degree, 70 gloss unit rather. That is what we refers to as SATIN here. Now, the difference between what they refer to as SATIN and what we refer to as SATIN is the fact that their own SATIN contains filler. It contains calcium. It contains calcium carbonate at a very minute unit, at a very minute, maybe in a 20 liter, which can be about 23 kg of paint. They have like 1 kg, which is less than 1%. 1% of the total production weight, or the total paint weight. So that is just that about that. But then here in this climb, we have no filler, except if you are able to get something, a filler that falls between 0.5 microns. Though I've possibly used 2 microns too before, fillers, in it, and it will still give you something very reasonable. But that's not our focus. Our focus is on is on the binder, the types of binder we use, which is either a styrene acrylic or a pure acrylic, because this is what will give you 90% of the result you are vying for: pure acrylic or styrene acrylic. So this is what will give you almost 90% of what you are looking for in terms of the sheen level. Now, for this, there are also factors that are actually mitigating against how it will work and how best it will work. That is why you are going to buy a certain brand. Now, you're going to buy a certain brand. Let's say, for example, for explanation, this is just for an explanation. I'm not trying to talk down on the brand. No, this is for explanation. Let's say you buy Acrona. Yeah, a very wonderful brand, Acrona. You buy Acrona as the binder that you're going to use. Maybe Acrona 55. I think they have 557 also. 557 also. They have 557. They are actually depicted with codes and all that. You buy that, to produce. Okay, let me not even put a code. Let me not put a code. Just you just get to your vendor and say, do you have acrylic? And they said, yes, we have acrylic. And they give you, and you said, do you have Acrona? They said, yes, we have Acrona, the brand Acrona. So give me Acrona. Or some of you even go there and ask for, give me Acrona, because you think it is what will give you the best of sheen during your production. Or let's say you ask for Visicryl. So they give you Visicryl and you use, and you get excellent results for your initial use. You say, Visicryl is very fine, it's wonderful, it will give you the best, without getting to know what either of these two contains, the Visicryl or the Acrona. So what will give you an edge over others, that will give you consistent result, is for you to find out what is inside of either the Acrona you are using or the Visicryl that you are using. So that is what will now lead us to some of the factors that determine the results you're going to get with whatever binder you are using, whether you are using a pure acrylic or styrene acrylic. Either of the two will give you excellent result, but the best of it is the pure 100% pure acrylic. But what we find in the markets the most is the styrene acrylic. Now let's zoom our attention to styrene acrylic and begin to talk about some of the factors that you may need to consider when choosing the kind of styrene acrylic that you are looking for in the market, and so that will also inform you about the brand you must be endeared to. Okay, if not the brand to be endeared to, at least what it contains. Even that means you'll be able to choose right, even when the brand name is not a well-known brand name. Because you know what you're actually looking for, you can choose conveniently that brand, because it is the chemical content you're looking at, not the brand name. So for styrene acrylic, two things are important, or whichever acrylic you are using, whether pure acrylic, 100% pure acrylic, or you're using a styrene acrylic. Let's just zoom our attention to styrene acrylic. Styrene acrylic. Some factors that you need to begin to consider when choosing the binder, styrene acrylic. Now we have one, the solid content. The solid content of the binder. The solid content of the binder matters a whole lot. It matters a whole lot, which I know each and every one of us understand that also. So in the market, we have about two solid content variants. We have, I think, for the 5 and 50 plus, 50 or 50 plus 1 or plus 2. That's how they used to put it on the technical data sheet, that you can either get +1 or +2. But what we are looking, the value we are looking out for is the 50 itself. And what is solid content of the binder you are using? It means the ratio of solvent to the solid content of the acrylic. Now, let me explain this. The acrylic in itself comes in powder form before it is emulsified to have emulsion, acrylic emulsion. To have acrylic emulsion, we call it acrylic emulsion. So it is emulsified for us to have acrylic emulsion. So the addition of solvents, which can be water and other solvents, water and other solvents, or co-solvents, so to speak, co-solvents. So we either have water, which is the primary solvent, and we have co-solvents, which can be whatever solvent is going into its production, even the former wetting agents and all that, which have water in them. And sometimes I think some of the co-solvent may be glycols, which will serve a purpose as wetting agents also in it. So all of these things matter. So the submission of the solvent plus the solid content of the acrylic is what will give us the acrylic emulsion. It will give us the acrylic emulsion. So what that means is, when you have 50% solid content, means we have 50%. Let me clean this off. So we have 50% solvent, which includes water and every other co-solvent, added to 50% acrylic to form the acrylic emulsion. And if you get 45% solid content acrylic, it means you have 55% solvent added to 45% solid acrylic to have the acrylic emulsion. So that is what the solid content means. Now, the most important thing is how it will impact your sheen level. I actually wanted to talk about what is the implication of solid content. It means when you use that in your production, let's say 50% solid content acrylic, when you use it in the production, this will also determine how much of water you are using in your production. It will determine how much film will be left after the evaporation of solvents in your production. So, since what determines your film is your acrylic, it goes, it also means that your sheen level will be determined by the thickness of your film. Will be determined by the thickness of your film. So the thicker the film, the thicker your film, the better the sheen, or the better the formation of your film, and that will automatically turn to sheen. So when you are producing, what all of this simply means is you are going at an acrylic with 50% solid content. And another explanation to that is that it will determine how much you are using in a production, how much you're using in a production, how much of that acrylic you're using in a production. For instance, some people will say, okay, I want to use 8 kg in my 20-liter SATIN production. If your acrylic is a 50% solid content, what you have actually used actually in that production is 4 kg of acrylic. Yes, 4 kg of acrylic. In other words, you are having 4 kg of water and other solvents plus 4 kg of solid acrylic. So when this water leaves, it will remain 4 kg of acrylic. So you're having just 4 kg of acrylic left after drying. And this will now be what will form your film. So that is why it is important to have all of these details. See you in the next video, where we'll be talking about the second determinant factor that determines your sheen level, and we'll be explaining more also. We'll be explaining more also of the binder. Having explained solid content, another factor that determines how proficient your acrylic will be is what is called particles. Particle size of the acrylic. Particle size of the acrylic. This is another factor that determines the proficiency of the acrylic you're using, the particle size. What is particle size? When talking about particle size, we are talking about how fine or how coarse a solid is. How fine or how coarse a solid is. The best explanation we can use is in fillers. because I think I've done quite a teaching on fillers and their particle size, which is measured in microns. It is measured in microns and all that. That's how they are actually measured. Though there are also other measuring units, but that is also very important in acrylic. Acrylic also have particle size. I want you to do the findings yourself. I want you to research on the particle size. The higher the no the how do I put it now? The lower the particle size, or the finer the particle size, the better the film and the better the sheen. So you want to look for something that has a very small particle size. For example, we have in filler we have in fillers, we have 2 microns, we have 5 microns, up to 100 microns, which is very coarse. So this is smoother than this is smoother than this, or this is finer than this, and this is finer than this. So all of those things will determine how the acrylic will function. So you can go and check that out. So you want to also know the particle size of the acrylic you are using. You say, how do I know? It is always, how will I get to know the particle size? The brand that you want to buy, that you want to use, you want to check out their technical data sheet. So all of this information are always included in their technical data sheet. So you want to choose acrylic that has a very fine particle. Why? It is going to go ahead to define your sheen level. So see you in the next class, where we'll be talking about other things, other factors that is responsible for your sheen, the consistency of your satin sheen. Thing to talk about is the particle size. The particle size of the acrylic you are using. You are still very much on the binder. The particle size of the binder. The particle size of the binder, very important. Though not every one of us is actually paying attention, and I'm very sure that most person don't even know that the acrylic that you use or you're using has a size or have particle size, which is fine. And how do you get to know the particle size of an acrylic that you are using? It will always be on the technical data sheet of the product. That is why it is very important to have product knowledge. Without that, you will be not succeed in this paint production. Or at best, you can always just produce products that is mid-range, but not top there, not up there. If you get what I actually mean by that. But if you want to produce top-notch paint, you have to have product knowledge. You have to have product knowledge. It's very important, and it is the best that you can actually do for yourself in this field, to have product knowledge. Because in order to climb, there is what we call specification, to the detail. You pay attention to the specification of what you're actually using, the chemicals you are using in that production. If there's going to be an alteration, that you're going to alter anything at all, it must first of all be tested before alteration of any chemical that is actually listed on the production technical list. So you must always pay attention to that detail. So it's very important to know the particle size of the binder that you're using. That is why for every brand you want to use, you want to make studies, you want to research about their products, using their codes and the brand name to check for that particular product online and know what it is. The particle size, just like I mentioned in when I was actually talking about fillers. Just like fillers has particle size or filler have particle size, the same is applicable to binder. They also have particle size. The particle size is measured in either microns or nanometer. The most professional way of actually measuring it is nanometer. Nanometer, that's 1 billionth of a meter. That's extremely tiny, extremely small, extremely small. Our hair size, that's the size of our head, of our hair rather, is about 80,000, 80,000 nanometer. So the size, the most proficient particle size for an acrylic that should be used for satin is around from 80 to 150 nanometer. So when you check the technical data sheet, what you should be looking at is within this range, 80 to 150. You can have something smaller than this. If you have something smaller than this, you will be having very, very high sheen, very, very high sheen, and that can be around maybe 15 nanometer. So when you understand this concept, when you understand this concept very well, you will not have issue at all with satin sheen, because you understand this concept that satin has particle size, that we have what is called the binder solid content, solid content, solid content, and we have the binder size, the particle size. So this will help inform you of how much of the binder to use and how much of the binder to use in a particular production. And this will inform you of how well the film will perform. So if you understand these two concepts, I bet you will not have any issue with your satin sheen. So you pay attention to that you are actually looking for an acrylic, whether styrene acrylic or pure acrylic, that is having 80 to 150 nanometer. One of the sweetest spots that you should go at is either between 80 and 100 nanometer. This 100, between these two, is where semi-gloss rests. That's a sweet spot for semi-gloss, and then you can still use for satin. So when you are looking for a higher gloss level, then you can have something lesser than that. But tentatively, what you are going to get is between this range, 80 to 150. So anything higher than that, you are going to have issue with your sheen. So majority of the how do I put it now, cheap acrylic in the market have a particle size higher than this. Some of them can be as high as 250 nanometer or 300. So, but then if you are able to get a particle size within this range, between this 80 and 100 nanometer, you're going to have excellent sheen. You're going to have excellent sheen. That I can guarantee you. Excellent sheen is guaranteed within this range. So you want to look for a binder within that particle size rate. So having said that, just like I said earlier, those two factors will now inform you of the solid content will inform you of how much of it to be used. So if I use 8 kg of acrylic, I'm having 4 kg at the end. If I use 10, kg, I'm having 5 kg at the end. If I use 12, I'm having 6 kg. So that is what that means. That is how solid content can go to affect the sheen. So whatever is left is what will form the film, and the film is the primary source of your sheen level, because that is what is left of the paint. This is what is left of the paint. It is called the non uh, non-volatile material. The non-volatile material. So it remains on the substrate, which will include the binder, and the pigments. Those are the two things that will be left. Thus, most of the solvents will evaporate. Most of the solvent, including your Texanol, whatever you actually have in there, will eventually evaporate out of the paint. So you'll be left with these two things. And these two things is what will help, in calculating the film thickness. But that's not what we are talking about in this video. So you want to pay attention, critical attention to those two things for you to have an excellent sheen, consistent sheen. So you want to pay attention to product information. Want to have product knowledge. You want to have the knowledge on what you're actually buying for you to always get consistent results in production. The second thing you want to pay attention to, the second thing you want to pay attention to, the second thing you want to pay attention to is your additives. Additives. And that includes the coalescence agents or the coalesce agents, your defoamer, and your wetting agent. So you will be saying, why is this things important? Let's put this thing too. Let's put your dispersant. Those are the things you want to pay attention to under your additives that will determine, the quality of your satin sheen, or how good or how shining your satin will be. You want to pay attention to these things under what I group them under additives, because they are used in very minute amount. You know what addictive is? They are chemicals that are actually used in a minute amount during your production. So you want to pay attention to them. The very first one I wrote here is the coalescence agent or the coalescent agent, which include but not limited to Texanol, propylene glycol, butyl glycol, and let's add propylene glycol, even though that is actually seen as or is considered to be a humitant. No, something that adds that keeps the paint wet for a longer time. Humitant. So you want to pay attention to these things. Texanol, butyl glycol, propylene glycol. So whatever coalescent agents you're actually using in your production will help you to get a quality sheen. So Texanol is the one we are very, very most acclimatized with. So we use Texanol all of the time. So it is very, very essential that you add enough of this in your production, enough of Texanol. Though it should not be overdosed, it should be between 0.5 to 1% of the total production, 1.5 to 1% of the total production. So when you calculate that, you can always get the amount you want to use, because I don't want to give you a generic measurements to be used. Though maybe in our subsequent class, I will now begin to teach, or I will give us formulation, perfect formulation for us to have a premium satin production formulation. I guess I will actually be doing that. So you want to get your coalesced agent. The coalesced agent helps in film formation. That is why I said you have to pay attention to it. It ensures that there is temporal softening of the acrylic or the binder. It ensures there is temporary softening of the binder, so that they can be a fusing together of the binder molecules, so that they can fuse together and form a continuous chain, which eventually leads to the film that we have left on the substrate that is painted. So we want to pay close attention to the example. So I will not be dwelling so much on that, because that is actually a settled case. We want to move on to the next one that is very important, the type of the foamer. The foamer used in your production can mar, let me use the word mar, or make your satin. So the type of the foamer that is used in the production can either make or mar. Mar means destroy. It can destroy the sheen of your satin. How do I mean? The reason is because of the way that the foamer you use is produced, or the what is it called now? The the chemicals that are used in the production. We have two types, no, or better still, I don't want to really group it like that, but we have let me just say two types of the foamer that is used. We have the mineral oil deformer, and we have the silicone based deformer. We have other deformer, I think we have the polyurethane and all that. So but then I want to zoom attention to these two, because that is what is most common in this part of the world. When you begin to check begin to make your own research, you begin to discover so many other ones. But what is common in this part of the world that we find ourselves is the mineral oil and the silicone based oil. When you use mineral oil, especially most of the foamer that we buy in the open markets, from our vendors, are the ones that are produced locally. Those deformers are produced locally, and one of the chemicals that is used in that production can ensure that your paint is matted, and that is silica, especially in the production of mineral oil deformer. So one of the chemicals used is silica, in order to inhabit foams, So you want to pay attention to that also. But aside this, in paint production, foam is actually a problem, a huge problem. It is the emphasis on the issue that foam in paint production will present as not being fully emphasized. We have not really emphasized the issue that foam presents in paint production. During agitation or mixing, foam is formed. And we have two types of foams. We have the micro and the macro. The micro and the micro and the macro. This is foam that cannot be, that is not visible. to the naked eyes, to the naked eyes. But this one you can see it. So most time when we produce, we only take care of this and not this. So eventually this will migrate to the substrate that is actually painted. It will migrate to the surface of the substrate painted. It will migrate off from your binder and ensure that it form a microscopic, we call it microscopic hues or microscopic mountains, so to speak, and creates surface roughness. Surface roughness. And any form of roughness on the substrate or on the film will lead directly to reduction in sheen. Any surface roughness, or at all, especially with microscopic surface roughness, will lead to reduction in sheen. That is why I said you pay attention to this, the deformer that is used. In many production, no, especially foreign production, some of the things, formulation that I've handled, foreign formulation that I've handled, you will see they will use two system deformer. I call it two system deformer. One will be added during the grinding phase, and the other will be added during the let down phase. So they will always use two system deformer, one at the grinding phase during the agitation, and the second one at the let down stage. The let down stage is the time you had your acrylic. This one is when you grind your pigment, and this is when you had your acrylic or binder. So with lesser agitation, the first one will have higher agitation, maybe between 800 RMP and 2500 RMP, while this one from between 400 RMP to 800 RMP. That's rotation per minute. So you see, during that phase, there's an assumption that there can be air bubble buildup, so another set of deformer is used in deforming it. So when you want to produce satin that will give you consistent sheen, you want to pay attention to those things. You want to pay attention to your coalescent agent or coalescent agent. You want to pay attention to your deformer. And for this coalescent agent, you can use two. You can use hexanol. You can use you can use Texanol, you can use Texanol, you can use butyl glycol in conjunction, or Texanol and propylene glycol. That combination is very well, is appropriate. Texanol and propylene glycol. This one will give your paint a wet edge so that you can avoid roller marks, and this one will keep on with the work of film formation. So that is that about that. So in your production, you want to ensure you use two system deformer, and if you are not using two system deformer, you want to add your deformer at the initial stage. Ensure that the deformer you are using can actually take care of both types of foams. That is known, the micro, where is it? I think the micro and the macro form. So you want to take care of those two forms. So it is advisable you had your deformer in the grinding phase and then leave some for the let down stage. But there are different deformer for those stages. But if I begin to talk about it now, some of them will be very difficult for you to get. But there are deformer that is very, very good. I think BYK 36 or so is a very good deformer to use. But then When you get to your vendors, they may not know it by all of these names, and that is why your home product knowledge is key to your advancement in this field is very, very key. So now, having talked about that, let's go to the wetting agent. We go on to the wetting agent, which is another key factor, which is another key factor in your SATIN SHEEN. You say, how is the wetting agent a factor? The reason why the wetting agent will be a factor is because of dispersion. One of the pigments used in satin, or one of the pigments or the most used pigments in satin is your titanium dioxide, the pigment titanium dioxide, and it makes up the bulk of the pigments used. It makes up of the bulk of the pigments used. And I've said times without number that one of the most difficult pigment to disperse is titan. So if it is not well dispersed, it will end up disrupting satin sheen. It will end up disrupting the sheen of your satin. So you want to ensure that you have a wetting agent that is very, very good to disperse this. So I would not recommend. I want you to make your own research and know the wetting agent. Maybe, okay, let me just talk about Tego, one good dispersant, Tego. So Tego is good. Is it Tego? Um, uh, and glide, I guess, glide or something like that. So they are very good dispersants and all that. They are wetting agents. So wetting agents will help to reduce the surface tension of the medium to ensure proper wetting of your pigments. So that is all about that. So you want to pay close attention to this. You want to pay close attention to this. So another one to consider is your dispersant. Your dispersant is also very, very key to dispersing or to the dispersion of the most critical pigments in your satin paint, which is titan. Your critical pigment is the titan. So the dispersant you use is very, very, very important. Dispersant. The most common dispersant we use is Cargon. Even that is not its name. This is a trademark. Cargon is a trademark of is it Ashland or so? I think the company is Ashland. I really can't tell now. So, but the chemical content is sodium polyphosphate. But it is not the most excellent dispersant that you can get. So the one of the best dispersant for high-end paint is ammonium acrylic. I don't know if you can see that. Let me bring it up. Ammonium uh, polyacrylate. If you can get this chemical, it is the best dispersant, far better than polyphosphate salt, far better than polyphosphate salt. Under polyphosphate, we still have the SH, ZH, SHMP, SHMP, which is still a polyphosphate salt. But the best is ammonium polyacrylate. This other one, but it's not coming to mind now. But if you are able to get this, lay your hands on this. It is the most and the best dispersant that you can use. So make your research on this, and but then just to make do, with what we have. Ensure you have a very good, a very good polyphosphate uh, chemical to disperse your pigment, so you want to pay attention to that also. So having said that, let's now include the third factor, the third factor under this main heading. The third factor is your dispersion. Under that, we have dispersion time, we have the time, and we have dispersion speed. So this is going to be for definitely another class for me to explain all of these concepts. But then you must ensure that you disperse your paints very well. You disperse your paint very well. You grind it very well. That is the technical term that we use. You grind it very well, so that you can have, don't hurry, don't be in haste when you are producing. And one of the instruments that can help you determine if your pigment has been grounded very well, or if your paint has been grounded very well, especially satin paint, is the Edgeman scale. The Edgeman scale, or the Edgeman gauge, rather, the Edgeman gauge. It is spelled this, Edgeman gauge. It will help you to determine if your paint has really the reached the level that is most appropriate for that type of paint. It is a metal tool. It is just a flat bar like this. You scoop some of the paint, and you put it on it. Then you drag it with a spatula. I can call it that. It's a metal disc. You drag it, so it will tell you the fineness or the fineness of that. You remember we talked about particle size. So it would, it's not just like a metal bar like this. So you put the paint here, so you drag it down. It is actually grooved. So when you drag it down, it will now show you how fine that pigment is, and every side of it is actually labeled. It is labeled in numbers. So the target for satin paint and high gloss paint is 7, Eggman 7, or no, between Eggman 7 to 4. Between Eggman 7, it's just 7, let's say 7, Eggman 7. So, which is a very perfect grind for high gloss and special types of paint. So, at that level, the particle is very fine. So, when you apply it on your substrate, you're having extra sheen. So you want to pay attention to your dispersion, which include the dispersion time and the dispersion speed. No, you want to pay close attention. You have to ensure that your paint is properly grounded before before you let it down. And I've explained let down stage. Let down stage is the time you had your acrylic. So that is just that about that. So the factors that can help you to maintain a proper sheen is, first, the binder, the additives, and your dispersion phase or speed, which includes your dispersion, which include your dispersion time and your dispersion speed. So we'll stop this class here, and then we'll see you in the next one.